Have you ever been in a place that feels wrong? A place where the architecture seems to hold its breath? We call them liminal spaces, transition points, hallways, waiting rooms, empty offices at 3 a.m. They are supposed to be places you pass through, not places you stay. But for those who work the night shift, these spaces aren't transitions. They are traps. Tonight we have 3 true stories from the people who stayed too long in the quiet and found something watching from the walls. This story comes from a user named nightnurse_88. I've worked the graveyard shift at St. Jude's for 6 years. I'm used to the quiet. I'm used to the occasional code blue. But I wasn't used to the West Wing. The West Wing was closed for renovations 3 months ago. It was sealed off by plastic sheeting and heavy do not enter tape. My station was right next to the entrance. It started on a Tuesday around 2:15 a.m. The hospital hums at night, a specific frequency of air conditioning and buzzing lights. But that night the hum changed. It got deeper, like a vibration in my teeth. I looked up from my chart. The plastic sheeting covering the West Wing was moving, not blowing in a draft. It was breathing, pushing out, then sucking in. I walked over. "Hello?" I whispered. "Stupid. You never talk to the dark." I pulled the plastic back. The hallway beyond wasn't under construction. It was perfect. Too perfect. The floor shone like a mirror. There was no dust, no tools, just an endless stretch of white corridor that seemed to go on longer than the building actually allowed. And at the very end of that impossible hallway was a nurse's station, identical to mine. There was someone sitting there, a nurse, wearing my scrubs, sitting in my posture. I froze. The figure at the end of the hall didn't move. It just stared at a chart. I took a step back, letting the plastic sheet fall. Slap. The sound of bare feet hitting tile. From inside the wing, I ripped the plastic open again. The hallway was empty, but the station at the end, the chair was spun around to face me. Empty. I didn't go in. I went back to my desk and stared at the monitors until the sun came up. But here's the part that made me quit. When the day shift manager came in, I asked about the renovations. He looked at me confused. "West Wing?" he said. "We don't have a West Wing. That wall is the exterior of the building." I looked at the plastic sheeting. I pulled it down. Behind it was solid brick. But I know what I saw. And sometimes when I'm trying to sleep, I can still hear that deep, vibrating hum and the sound of wet feet on polished tile. Some doors aren't meant to be opened, and some offices aren't meant to be worked in. I worked IT for a massive data processing firm, the kind of place that occupies floors 10 through 40 of a downtown skyscraper. My job was server maintenance, usually between midnight and 4 a.m. The 14th floor was known as the farm, just acres of cubicles. No personality, no photos, just gray walls. I was fixing a router in Section D. It's easy to get turned around in there. All the aisles look the same. I finished the job and headed for the elevators. I turned left at the water cooler, right at the break room, and straight down the main corridor. But the elevators weren't there. Instead of the steel doors, there was another aisle of cubicles. I frowned, checking my phone. No signal. Weird. I must have taken a wrong turn. I turned around to retrace my steps. I walked back to the break room. But it wasn't a break room anymore. It was a meeting room. Glass walls, empty chairs. I started walking faster. The silence was heavy. You know that feeling when you put your hands over your ears? That pressure? The whole floor felt like that. I started running. Left, right, straight. Cubicles, cubicles, cubicles. I stopped to catch my breath. I looked into the nearest cubicle. On the desk, there was a phone. It was off the hook. I picked it up. There was no dial tone, just a voice, a recorded voice, calm and cheerful. "The employee is currently away from their desk. Please leave a message after the scream." I dropped the phone. Suddenly, the lights flickered. All of them. When they came back on, the layout had changed. The aisle I was standing in was now a dead end. a solid wall of gray fabric right in front of my face. I heard the sound of a rolling chair squeaking, coming from the other side of the fabric wall. I threw myself at the fire exit door, which I swear wasn't there a second ago, and burst into the stairwell. I ran down 14 flights of stairs without stopping. I don't work in offices anymore. Now I work outdoors, where I can see the horizon, where the walls can't move when I blink. Liminal spaces often feel nostalgic. They remind us of places we knew as children, malls, arcades. But in the dark, nostalgia rots. My final story tonight comes from a security guard named Marcus. Mall security is 90% boredom and 10% chasing teenagers. But at 3 a.m., the mall changes. The music never stops playing, you know? It just echoes, distorted vaporwave tracks bouncing off the empty tile. I was patrolling the second floor near the department store entrance. The mannequins always creeped me out. They were the old kind, faceless, just smooth white heads. I did my round at 2 a.m. Everything was normal. The mannequins in the Gap window were posed in a family picnic scene. Dad standing, mom sitting, kid holding a ball. I did my next round at 3 a.m. As I walked past the Gap, I stopped. The dad mannequin. His head was turned. I froze. I know I didn't imagine it. Before he was looking at the mom. Now he was looking out the window, directly at where I was standing. I radioed the control room. "Hey, did anyone go into the Gap unit?" "Negative," the dispatcher said. "You're the only soul on the floor." I kept walking, faster this time. I felt eyes on my back. I got to the food court on the other side of the atrium. I turned around to look back across the railing. They were out, dozens of them. The white mannequins. They were lined up along the railing of the second floor, motionless. All of their heads were tilted down, looking at me in the food court. I blinked. They were closer. I didn't blink again. I backed up toward the exit, keeping my eyes on them. They didn't move when I watched. But the moment my flashlight flickered, they shifted. Jerky, plastic movements. I locked myself in the security office and watched the cameras. On screen 4, the hallway outside my door was empty. On screen 5, the food court was empty. On screen 6, the Gap store window was empty. They weren't in the store, and they weren't in the halls. I spent the rest of the night with my gun drawn, facing the door. When the morning crew arrived, the mannequins were back in the window. The picnic scene, but the dad mannequin? His plastic hand was pressed against the glass, and on the other side of the glass was a greasy human handprint. The next time you find yourself alone in a hallway, or an empty office, or a quiet hospital, stop. Listen to the hum. Is it just the air conditioning, or is it the sound of the reality wearing thin? These have been tales from the watching walls. If you enjoyed tonight's descent into the liminal, leave a like, and tell me in the comments, have you ever seen a mannequin move? Until next time, don't look too closely at the shadows.